Prison food exposed the $1 meals served behind bars in America's toughest prisons. The smell hit before the alarms did. Burned bread, sour milk, boiling anger. In the summer of 2018, inside the Lee Correctional Institution in South Carolina, hundreds of inmates began shouting at once. Metal trays slammed against concrete floors. Plastic cups shattered. In one housing unit, men were already fighting. Officers backed away as the noise turned into chaos. It would become one of the deadliest prison riots in the United States in 25 years. But it did not start with weapons. It started with tension that had been building for months. Overcrowding, gang rivalry, lockdowns, and complaints about food that inmates said cost barely more than $1 per meal to produce. As emergency lights flashed, inmates overturned tables in the dining area. Guards called for backup. Radios screamed across the compound. The prison, built for about 1,300 men, was holding nearly 1,600. Meals were stretched thin. Tempers were thinner. By the time order was restored hours later, 7 inmates were dead. 17 more were injured. The entire country was asking one question: how did it get this bad? To understand that night, you have to rewind. Lee Correctional Institution is a maximum security prison. Many of the men sent there were serving long sentences for serious crimes: robbery, assault, gang activity, even murder. Among them were known gang leaders transferred from other facilities because they were considered too dangerous elsewhere. Daily life was strict.
Count time.
Work detail.
Lockdown.
Meals served fast on plastic trays. Breakfast might be grits and a biscuit. Lunch could be rice and beans. Dinner sometimes processed meat and bread. According to public reports, some prison systems operate on food budgets averaging around $1 to $2 per inmate per meal. Inmates complained about portion sizes, about quality, about feeling ignored. Officers warned about rising gang control inside dorms. Reports later showed that staff shortages left some housing units unsupervised for long periods. On that April night, rival gang members saw their chance. And when the doors were supposed to lock, they didn't. The doors stayed open longer than they should have. In a maximum security prison, seconds matter. At Lee Correctional Institution, those seconds turned into hours. Rival gang members moved through the dorms without barriers. Surveillance cameras captured shadows running down walkways. Officers, outnumbered and locked out of certain units for safety, waited for tactical teams to arrive. But the violence did not appear from nowhere. Months earlier, the warning signs were already there. Lee was overcrowded. Designed for about 1,300 inmates, it was holding nearly 1,600. Staffing levels were low. Some housing units were controlled more by gang hierarchy than by correctional officers. Inmates aligned themselves with national gangs, the Bloods, the Crips, the Gangster Disciples, groups with influence both inside and outside prison walls. Food became one of the daily pressure points. South Carolina's prison system operated on a tight food budget, reported to average close to $1.80 per inmate per day for all meals combined. That meant stretching ingredients, buying in bulk, and relying on low-cost processed items. Trays often carried small portions: rice, beans, soy-based meat substitutes, bread, and watered-down drinks. For many inmates, meals were not just about hunger. They were about respect,
Control. Power.
In some dorms, stronger inmates took food from weaker ones. Complaints about portion size sometimes turned into threats. Officers documented arguments in dining halls weeks before the riot. Lockdowns made things worse. When fights broke out, entire units were confined to their cells for days. Meals were delivered cold. Tempers grew hotter. Administrators later confirmed that intelligence reports had warned of rising gang tensions before April 2018. But transfers were slow. Staffing shortages limited supervision. The system was stretched thin. On the night of April 15, 2018, a fight between rival groups exploded inside one housing unit. Without enough officers to immediately regain control, the conflict spread. Furniture was used as barricades. Emergency response teams waited for safe entry. For hours, inmates fought while the prison remained in lockdown. Outside the walls, families began hearing rumors on social media. Phones rang unanswered. News helicopters circled overhead. Inside, sirens echoed across the yard. And as the sun began to rise over Lee Correctional Institution, officers prepared to step back into units where silence had finally replaced the noise, not knowing exactly what they would find. When tactical officers finally entered the housing units at Lee Correctional Institution, the silence felt heavier than the noise had hours before. Broken tables were scattered across the floor. Trays from the evening meal lay crushed under boots. The air smelled like sweat, smoke, and something worse, the aftermath of unchecked violence. Officers moved slowly, shields raised, calling out commands. Some inmates lay injured. Others stood against the walls, exhausted, staring at the ground. 7 men would not walk out alive. Investigators later confirmed it was the deadliest prison riot in the United States in more than 2 decades. Most of the deaths were linked to gang conflict, but the riot exposed something deeper, a system stretched beyond its limits. In the days that followed, Lee Correctional Institution went into full lockdown. Inmates were confined to their cells nearly 24 hours a day. Meals were no longer served in open dining areas. Instead, trays were pushed through narrow slots in metal doors. The trays looked the same as before, small portions of rice, beans, bread, processed meat. Food that cost just a few dollars a day to provide. But now, those trays arrived in silence. Correctional officers described fear inside the facility. Many admitted they had warned leadership about rising gang control and unsafe staffing levels. Public reports later showed that some dorms had only one officer assigned to supervise dozens of high-risk inmates. Families of the victims demanded answers. Media outlets across the United States questioned prison funding, oversight, and food budgets. Critics argued that overcrowding and limited resources created conditions where small tensions, even arguments during meals, could turn into deadly conflict. Inside lockdown, inmates felt the pressure too. No recreation, no group meals, no movement without escort. Days blurred together. Food, once a daily gathering point, became another reminder of confinement. Some inmates refused trays in protest. Others ate quickly, guarding every bite. Investigators continued piecing together timelines, reviewing surveillance footage, and examining intelligence reports that had warned of violence. But one question echoed through every cell block. If the warning signs were already there, why didn't anyone stop it before the trays started flying? The final report did not blame a single meal, but it showed how everything was connected. After the riot at Lee Correctional Institution, state investigators released findings that pointed to overcrowding, severe staffing shortages, and rising gang power inside the prison. Officers had warned supervisors about tension building between rival groups. Intelligence notes documented threats. Lockdowns were frequent. Morale was low. Food was not the sole cause, but it was part of daily life inside a system under strain. South Carolina's prison system, like many across the United States, operated on tight budgets. Public records showed food spending averaged just a few dollars per inmate per day. Feeding thousands of men required bulk purchasing, processed ingredients, and strict portion control. On paper, the meals met nutritional standards. In reality, many inmates said the trays felt like another reminder of how little control they had. Experts later explained that in high-security prisons, small frustrations can grow fast. When men are locked together for years, when gangs control housing units, when officers are outnumbered, even routine moments, like lining up for dinner, carry tension. After the riot, Lee remained on extended lockdown. Security procedures were tightened. Some gang leaders were transferred to other facilities. Staffing levels were reviewed. Body cameras and new monitoring systems were introduced in parts of the prison system. Families buried their loved ones. Officers returned to shifts behind reinforced doors. And the trays kept coming.
Rice, beans, bread,
processed meat, 3 times a day. In prisons across America's toughest facilities, meals still cost only a few dollars. They are designed to feed thousands, not to comfort anyone. For some inmates, that tray is just food. For others, it represents control, scarcity, and survival. The riot at Lee Correctional Institution became a warning sign for the entire country, a reminder that when prisons operate under pressure, the smallest cracks can widen into disaster. Because behind bars, it's never just about the meal. It's about everything boiling underneath it.